But this latest report goes all the way back, he said tongue-in-cheek, to 2013. But we all know that the world didn't start in 2013. It actually restarted in around, what? Actually, it was probably around then, but the last downturn was 2007. So my question to you is that we're seeing some tumult now, and it's hard to imagine that it's going to affect cap rates today, right? But it certainly could have some impact going forwards because of exactly those expectations that you have, right? Growth expectations.
Yeah.
But how do cap rates vary? And I have another question to dovetail into this in a minute. How do cap rates vary through the life of the real estate cycle?
Sure. So historically, and you can see the charts on this, they go way up during a downturn, and then they creep back down, and they go back up again, and they porpoise, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, one of the material changes that happened during the last cycle is a couple of things. Number one, when you got to the peak of prior cycles, you typically saw secondary market cap rates and primary market cap rates converge, okay? At the peak of this cycle, secondary market cap rates are still very wide of primary market cap rates, except in multifamily and industrial, where they're right on top of each other. In office and in retail and in hotels, still very wide. So I think, and I say this not to disparage secondary markets, but the market has shown more discipline this time in going into some of these markets that may not have the same growth expectations. They're not chasing yield. In fact, one of my clients uses the term a value trap. What is a value trap? You go into a market that has a high yield, it's like, oh, I'll get a great return. Well, what if NOI goes down? What if liquidity dries up? Well, that's what a value trap is. And so you're correct that historically you've seen this porpoising, and I'm using my hand as a prop here. But so change number one is that the convergence of secondary and primary has stayed wide in office, retail, and hotels, where it typically was convergence. That's point A. Point B is the top of the chart now, I think, is permanently lower. So let's assume that if there are two basic concepts in economics that really drive modeling. One is reversion to the mean, and the other is the scariest four words in finance. This time is different, otherwise known as a secular shift, right? And so the reversion to the mean argument has consistently failed over the last 10 years because there has been a secular shift in markets like San Francisco and Boston and Austin, Texas. Why do I mention those three markets? Because if they go back to their historic means for cap rates and for rents, they're going to fall off the planet in terms of value. But that hasn't happened. And what is the secular shift that's occurred? Secular shift A is demographic, where we're seeing more young, talented people move to these markets. We're also seeing the large employers move to these markets. We're also seeing the industries in which they work, particularly tech and its subsidiaries like biotech, becoming such a big part of the market that they have outsized demand, which is stripping away demand from markets that had, quote, old school demand. There's new school demand and there's old school demand. New school demand is what we would call the TAMI industries, tech, information, media. Old school demand are the old school industries, which is law, accounting, finance, and government. And markets that have the disproportionate number of old school have not shown the same level of rent growth as though they've showed new school types of tenants. And when I say markets, I also mean submarkets. So an example of that would be the delta between the difference between Midtown and Midtown South. Midtown South used to be this sleepy little backwater that had rents way below Midtown. Guess what? Rents in Midtown South are now higher than the rents in Midtown because of the tech explosion.